he got jealous of me because I didn't break my nose or anything like that. He would kind of just beat me up, kick me in the body, or...
Dolph Lundgren wasn't supposed to be famous. He was a chemical engineer with a master's degree and a Fulbright scholarship to MIT. But he walked away from all of it to chase something else. By 1985, he was standing across from Sylvester Stallone in a boxing ring. Stallone wanted the punches to feel real, so Lundgren gave him exactly what he asked for. One clean shot to the chest changed everything. Stallone's body shut down. Doctors said he was lucky to survive. That single moment became one of the most dangerous scenes ever filmed. And the full story is still hard to believe. Hans-Dolph Lundgren's story begins quietly in Spånga on November 3, 1957. And for a while his world looked steady and academic. His mother taught languages, and his father worked as a government engineer. And the house always felt like a place where books mattered more than noise. He was the second of 4 children, and everyone expected good grades, which he delivered easily. But underneath that calm, something else was happening. His father's strictness kept tightening around him, and sometimes it turned physical. Those moments left him feeling small and unwanted, and hearing the word loser from the person who should have lifted him carved something deep inside him. Little by little, that pain began turning into ambition. School became his escape. Every question he could answer made him feel seen, and every perfect grade helped him breathe a little easier. Even though allergies kept him away from sports and made him feel different, he pushed harder in class because it was the only place where he felt strong. He stayed in Stockholm until he was 13, long enough to understand that he needed to get out before the heaviness at home pulled him down. That moment came when he moved to live with his grandparents in Nyland, far up in the quiet fields of Ångermanland. The air felt cleaner there, and the days slowed down in a way he had never known. Nature wrapped around him, and life no longer felt like a series of tense moments waiting to happen. He learned to enjoy simple things, like ice hockey and long walks, and soon he felt a freedom he had never experienced in Stockholm. The distance from his father helped him breathe in a new way. He started to believe he had potential that didn't depend on fear or pressure. That small northern town gave him room to grow, and more importantly, to imagine a future where he was strong in his own way. He would look back on that time as a turning point, the place where he began discovering himself instead of reacting to someone else's anger. Even though he loved arts and music, he chose a path his father might respect. He turned toward science and set his sights on engineering. His drive pushed him through high school with straight A's, and he walked out with the certainty that he could master something difficult. Chemical engineering looked like the right challenge, something serious and respected. He entered the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, then went on to earn a master's degree from the University of Sydney. Each step felt like one more brick in the wall he was building between himself and the childhood that had tried to break him. That decision didn't erase his love for art, but it showed he was willing to walk into hard fields just to prove he could conquer them. Scholarships followed him, and one of them even opened the door to MIT, far away in the United States. He didn't know it then, but this journey was slowly leading him toward a very different kind of life. His life took a sharp turn when martial arts entered the picture at 16. It began with judo, then quickly moved into karate. At first he tried Goju Ryu, but within 6 months he shifted to the far tougher Kyokushin style. Something inside him woke up as if the discipline and physical strain made sense to him in ways talking never had. Through high school and his required military service, he trained constantly, almost obsessively, pouring all his anger, fear, and determination into every practice. When he began competing at 19, things didn't go well at first. He lost 4 of his first 5 tournaments, and each defeat cut into him. The embarrassment made him push even harder. Instead of quitting, he switched fully to full contact Kyokushin, where he could test himself without holding back. Those early losses built the first version of the mindset people would later associate with him. The quiet voice telling him to keep going, keep fighting, keep proving himself. He carried that approach into everything he did. His engineering life kept moving forward while his martial arts training grew stronger. KTH in Sweden pushed him academically, but he stayed near the top of his class. Those demanding courses shaped him into someone who could handle pressure and think creatively at the same time. Scholarships soon took him across the world. In 1975, he reached the United States, studying chemical engineering at Clemson University and Washington State University. Life there was simple. He trained, studied, and blended into campus life without anyone knowing he would one day tower over Hollywood screens. He even joined the Cougar Marching Band, showing how many different sides he carried inside him. He eventually returned to Sweden to finish his degree, but that taste of America stayed with him, hinting at bigger possibilities. In 1982, he traveled to Australia for a master's degree at the University of Sydney. He graduated at the top of his class, proving again that he could excel in anything he committed to. While studying, he worked as a nightclub bouncer to support himself. The nights in King's Cross were loud and chaotic, filled with unpredictable situations. His height, his calm, and his Kyokushin training made him perfect for the job, even though he often had to deal with real violence. Those nights built a different kind of strength and taught him how to handle danger without losing control. He later worked as a doorman in New York City at the Limelight Club, sharing shifts with Chaz Palminteri before either of them were known. Those jobs taught him how to stay grounded in messy environments, a skill that would follow him into the world of action films. Right around this time, everything changed again. While working security at a Sydney nightclub in 1982, he met the unforgettable Grace Jones. She noticed him immediately. In her world of lights and music and chaos, his quiet confidence stood out. She hired him as her bodyguard, and soon their professional relationship turned into an intense romance. Their lives blended into one whirlwind as they traveled the world, walked into celebrity circles, visited Studio 54, and met artists like Andy Warhol. It was a life so different from engineering labs that it almost felt like a different universe. They stayed together for 4 years, full of passion and unpredictability. The relationship eventually ended because their paths were pulling them in different directions. But those years introduced him to a world he never expected to see. Grace Jones also pushed him toward acting. When she was cast in the James Bond film A View to a Kill in 1985, she recommended him for a small role. He appeared on screen for only a few seconds as a KGB assassin, but those seconds were enough to make people notice. That moment opened doors that kept swinging wider. Soon he was receiving real film offers and stepping closer to a career that had nothing to do with equations or laboratory work. That Bond appearance became the small spark that led to his breakout as Ivan Drago in Rocky IV later that same year. During all of this, his martial arts achievements kept rising. By 1980, he had already won the British Open knockdown heavyweight title, which counted as the European Championship. He defended it again in 1981. In 1982, he won the Australian Open Championship in both individual and team events. His black belt climbed to 4th Dan, which was rare for a non-Japanese fighter. Hollywood directors didn't have to imagine toughness with him because he carried real fighting experience that shaped every role he played. Then came the moment that surprised everyone. In 1983, he received a Fulbright scholarship to study at MIT, one of the most prestigious engineering schools in the world. Professors expected a serious scholar to walk through their doors, someone with a brilliant future in science. Instead, he rode in on a big black Yamaha motorcycle with Grace Jones behind him. Within weeks, he felt the pull of a different calling. Acting offered him a sense of purpose that engineering never had, and little by little he realized he wanted to chase that feeling. He made the bold choice to walk away from MIT and return to New York to pursue acting. Friends called it crazy, and even he later admitted that it was a wild decision. But something inside him said this was the path he was meant to follow. Dolph Lundgren's path to Ivan Drago didn't look possible at first. The role drew more than 8,000 auditions, and casting directors brushed him aside because they thought he was too tall and too athletic to fit their early idea of the character. Still, he kept showing up. He kept pushing. And when he finally stood in front of Sylvester Stallone for a personal audition, something shifted in the room. Stallone saw the size, the posture, the quiet intensity. And suddenly, the whole idea of Drago changed in his mind. He stopped thinking of a rough and primitive brute and started seeing a cold and flawless product of a futuristic training system. Lundgren could embody that without trying. Stallone even rewrote the character to fit the presence standing in front of him. Drago was supposed to talk more, but every time Lundgren stayed quiet, he seemed more dangerous, so Stallone cut lines until silence did most of the work. When the movie came out, it turned Lundgren into a star overnight and changed the Rocky franchise forever. What started as one man among thousands became one of the most important casting choices of the entire decade. Stallone's focus didn't stop at casting. He pushed the fight scenes with an intensity that made everyone uneasy. He wanted every punch to feel real, not staged. He told Lundgren to hit him for real, not lightly, not halfway. He wanted impact. Lundgren later said Stallone told him to go hard with the body shots and hit him in the chest with full power. Both men knew they were taking risks, but Stallone believed that the audience needed to feel every blow. Day after day, they traded hits that should have stayed inside a boxing gym instead of a film set. It wasn't normal for Hollywood, and it wasn't safe, but it was the only way Stallone felt the story would land. Then came the punch that people still talk about. During the final fight scene, Lundgren delivered a full hit to Stallone's chest, a clean shot that sent Stallone backward in a way the camera loved. No one realized in that moment how dangerous it was. Stallone didn't feel it right away, but later that night, things changed. His heart slammed against his breastbone, and the membrane around it began to swell. Doctors compared the injury to the kind people get in serious car crashes. His blood pressure shot up to 260, and suddenly the movie turned into a real emergency. That one punch nearly killed him, and even though it made the final cut, the aftermath became one of the most shocking behind-the-scenes stories in film history. After the injury, Stallone ended up in intensive care in California for 9 days. His blood pressure stayed dangerously high, and doctors were worried he might not make it. Filming stopped. Production stalled. Stallone later said he felt like he was talking to angels during those first hours in the hospital. The studio hid the details for a long time, but the truth eventually came out. Stallone's push for realism came close to costing him his life, and the experience became a Hollywood cautionary tale that people still bring up when talking about the risks actors sometimes take. Lundgren carried his own weight from that moment, too. He felt guilty when he heard the news because he had only done what Stallone told him to do. One day, he returned to Los Angeles, and a producer told him that Stallone was in the hospital. The shock hit him hard. He joked about following orders and even teased that he pulverized Stallone, but the humor covered a heavy feeling he didn't talk about often. Somehow the accident didn't break their friendship. They worked together again in The Expendables, and the story eventually turned into one of those strange Hollywood memories that mix danger with dark laughter. As Rocky IV spread across the world in 1985, Lundgren's life changed again. Standing 6 feet 6 inches tall and weighing around 240 pounds, he became the physical face of the Cold War villain. Drago barely spoke, and when he did, he delivered lines that stuck forever, especially his cold promise that he must break you. The mix of silence, power, and symbolism shaped how audiences saw him. The real punch that put Stallone in the hospital added to the myth, and soon Lundgren was locked into the image of the icy killer who felt more like a machine than a man. It became his blessing and his trap. People loved the character so much that for years Hollywood kept casting him as the same kind of dangerous figure. In 1987, he stepped into another kind of challenge when he played He-Man in Masters of the Universe. The movie came with a big budget and big hopes, but Lundgren struggled with the role and with performing in English while still fighting his accent. Critics weren't kind. Rotten Tomatoes hit it with a score of 21%, and the average rating slid to 3.6 out of 10. The film only made $17 million from a $22 million budget and became one of the decade's big misfires. Still, the movie slowly gathered a cult following, and even though Lundgren later said the role felt awkward and low in his career, fans kept holding on to it as part of his legacy. The late 80s and early 90s turned into a blur of hard-hitting action films for Lundgren. Red Scorpion in 1988 pushed him through injuries during a tough shoot in Namibia. The Punisher in 1989 was lined up for a wide release, but ended up going straight to video because of studio issues. I Come in Peace in 1990 brought more violence and sci-fi mix. Showdown in Little Tokyo in 1991 paired him with Brandon Lee and became another box office disappointment that later turned into a cult favorite. Every film strengthened his image as a towering action star who spoke little, hit hard, and dominated the screen with physical presence more than emotional complexity. Then came Universal Soldier in 1992. Lundgren stepped into the role of Sergeant Andrew Scott, a soldier whose mind snapped during the Vietnam War, and who returned as a deadly product of a military experiment. The film cost $23 million to make, and ended up earning $95 million worldwide. The critics were mixed at 35% on Rotten Tomatoes, but the movie worked. The final showdown between Lundgren and Jean-Claude Van Damme became a highlight of 90s action cinema. It also locked Lundgren even deeper into the image of a dangerous villain whose presence alone could carry a film. But Hollywood moves fast. By the mid-90s, studios shifted toward other stars, and Lundgren drifted into lower-budget productions. He became known as the king of B-movies. He worked steadily and he worked hard, but the big studio spotlight faded. This period stretched for more than a decade. Even when he found new energy through The Expendables in the 2000s, the label remained. It didn't matter how big he had been in 1985, Hollywood had already moved to its next chapter. Instead of slowing down, Lundgren stepped behind the camera. He directed The Defender in 2004, shooting parts of it in Bucharest, and releasing it the next year. He shaped the story, controlled the action, and made the fights look the way he wanted them to look. Then he directed The Mechanic in 2005, filming in Bulgaria and Los Angeles with only 32 days to finish. In 2007, he released Missionary Man, shot on Super 16mm film in just 24 days. Directing gave him a new kind of freedom. It let him build stories around what he knew best: and it gave him a place to work even while Hollywood focused on others. Somewhere between all these films, he chose a different kind of life. He moved to Marbella in Spain with his wife Annette Coveyberg and their daughters Ida and Greta. The town gave them peace and privacy. It gave the girls a normal childhood far away from paparazzi and Hollywood noise. He married Annette there, joined local events, and built a family life that felt real and quiet. Marbella even named a street after him in 2018, calling it Calle Dolph Lundgren. He said the town let him enjoy life to the fullest, and he meant it. It wasn't about fame during those years. It was about family. He stayed there for about a decade, choosing fatherhood over the chase for bigger roles. He trained with his daughters, attended community gatherings, and stayed present while they grew up. His ex-wife said their life in Spain existed for the sake of the girls, not the spotlight. And Lundgren agreed. It was a shift from non-stop action work to something gentler. He focused on stability, not stardom. Then came a moment that reminded the world who he really was. In May 2009, their Marbella home was invaded by 3 masked burglars. They tied up his wife and demanded valuables. None of them realized they were inside the home of a man with a black belt in karate and decades of combat training. When they noticed framed photos of Lundgren, they panicked and ran. The story spread across Spanish newspapers. People said things would have gone very differently if Lundgren had been home. His wife was unharmed, but the shock stayed with the family. When 2010 arrived, it brought something Dolph Lundgren never saw coming. Sylvester Stallone reached out and invited him back into the spotlight as Gunnar Jensen in The Expendables. It had been 25 years since their Rocky IV showdown, and hearing Stallone's voice again felt like a surprise that hit straight to the heart. Dolph had spent years slipping in and out of small films, and suddenly he was standing beside Jason Statham, Jet Li, Mickey Rourke, and a lineup that felt almost unreal. The set carried the kind of energy only legends can create. Stallone joked with him about their old boxing days, and every night the cast sat around telling stories that made the years melt away. Dolph's character was written with more layers than most of his earlier roles. A wild mercenary with humor, pain, and a broken past. It gave him something fresh to explore, and soon he felt the heat of a new fan base rising around him. The shoot itself was rough. Stallone broke his neck during a fight scene with Steve Austin and hurt his shoulder so badly he had to push through each day while hiding the pain. Dolph was hit by his own share of trouble. During training, he picked up an elbow infection from sparring and weights. It spread faster than he expected, and doctors had to cut his arm open and clean it out. He stayed in the hospital for 3 days and walked back on set like he had unfinished business. Those injuries became part of the film's whispered stories, the kind that stay behind long after cameras stop rolling. They showed how age had changed their bodies, but not their spirit. As the sequels rolled out, Gunnar Jensen changed right in front of the audience. In the first film, he was the unpredictable one, a soldier who looked ready to explode at any second. 2 years later, in The Expendables 2, he carried more humor and even shared his bizarre backstory about being a chemical engineering master who quit everything for a girl. That part came from Dolph's real life, which made the character feel oddly honest. By The Expendables 3, in 2014, Gunnar had become softer, almost the comic heartbeat of the team. When Expendables arrived in 2023, fans already loved him. They watched this once dangerous man grow into someone who could fight hard, crack jokes, and still show pieces of a wounded soul. Dolph found a new place in the franchise because of that shift, and it opened more doors than he expected. While the Expendables films shaped one side of his comeback, he was working on something far more personal at the same time. In 2014, he poured himself into a project called Skin Trade. He co-wrote it, produced it, and starred in it. The story followed a cop fighting human trafficking after his family was murdered by a Serbian mobster. Dolph had read horrifying newspaper pieces on trafficking and couldn't shake the idea of making a film that blended action with something painfully real. The movie didn't land perfectly with critics, but it stood out. It showed he wasn't afraid to step into darker issues and use his action background to shine a light on something far bigger than entertainment. Then came a different kind of spotlight. In 2018, he appeared in Aquaman as King Nereus, ruling the Zeebel Kingdom opposite Jason Momoa. The role carried weight, and by the time Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom arrived in 2023, his character was woven deeper into the story, even though he later admitted much of his work was cut. Around that same time, he stepped back into the rocky world in Creed Pum. Satu. For the first time, Ivan Drago wasn't a machine or a symbol. He was a broken man living in exile, trying to rebuild his life through his son Victor. Dolph delivered a performance filled with quiet pain and buried regret. It surprised people. It reminded them that he could be more than a towering villain from the 80s. But behind all those roles, something darker was happening inside him. In 2015, doctors found a cancerous tumor in his kidney. They removed it and told him it was renal cell carcinoma, the most common kidney cancer. He started the slow cycle of scans every 6 months. For a while, things stayed stable. It felt like he had outrun the worst of it. Then 2020 arrived with a brutal turn. An MRI showed multiple new tumors. One of them was buried deep in his liver, too big to remove. His doctor gave him 2 to 3 years. Dolph said that was the moment he finally felt the weight of mortality. Movie injuries never prepared him for that kind of truth. He had to rethink everything: work, family, time. He refused to stop fighting. He went for a second opinion in Los Angeles, and that decision changed his entire path. The new doctor found a mutation in one of his tumors. That single detail opened the door to targeted therapy. Within 3 months, the tumors shrank by 20 to 30%. By 2022, some had shrunk by 90%. Hope returned in a rush that felt almost unreal. Even while going through treatments, he kept acting. He directed and starred in Castle Falls. He shot Expendables 4. He filmed scenes for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. No one knew he was working through pain and recovery at the same time. He showed up, hit his marks, went home, and healed quietly. Then, in late 2024, he finally shared the news everyone had been waiting for. He was cancer-free. A lung ablation at UCLA removed his last tumor. In a video, he said it had been a rough ride that taught him to slow down and appreciate the present. He thanked everyone who stood beside him and urged others to keep searching for answers, because another opinion saved his life. Outside the spotlight, his story carried just as many chapters. He married Swedish designer Annette Kviberg in 1994, and they fell in love with Marbella, Spain. They stayed there for years, raising their daughters Ida and Greta. Ida arrived in April 1996 in Stockholm, and Greta followed in 2001. Their home looked warm and creative, a mix of fashion, film, and travel. Even after Dolph and Annette divorced in 2011, they stayed close for the sake of the girls. Later, Dolph found new love with Norwegian trainer Emma Krokdal. They met in Stockholm and slowly grew close. In June 2020, he proposed in a balcony suite with a violinist playing nearby. They married on July 13, 2023, in Mykonos, surrounded by people who mattered. The wedding had been delayed again and again because of the pandemic and his cancer battle. But Emma stayed with him through it all. In 2024, they both became U.S. citizens, stepping into a new chapter together. Long before Hollywood, martial arts shaped who he was. At 16, he started with judo and soon moved into Kyokushin karate. By 19, he stood in front of world champion Makoto Nakamura, weighing 17 kilos less and carrying only a green belt. The judges gave the win to Nakamura, but the fight revealed Dolph's toughness. He became European champion in 1980 and 1981 and earned his fourth Dan black belt. Even in his 60s, he still trains with the same fire he had as a kid. His teacher, Shihan Brian Fitkin, has been by his side for years, helping him shape fight scenes and stay sharp. His mind was just as strong. He earned a master's degree in chemical engineering from KTH Royal Institute of Technology and another from the University of Sydney in 1982. He was awarded a Fulbright scholarship and got accepted to MIT. But then he met Grace Jones, followed his heart into acting, and turned away from a path most people only dream of. He carried that analytical mindset into every script, using engineering to break down characters and martial arts to build discipline.